Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's time again for another Word Balloon Live, an edition of Scene Missing, where I talk about movies and TV and a lot of nerd stuff. John Suntress here. Now, you know, before I started podcasting and YouTubing and doing video and stuff, I spent a long time in Chicago radio. And when I was at the Score, the sports radio station, I got to do character voices and song parodies and had a lot of fun doing voices. And my inspiration, one of my inspirations for going in that direction, were two great radio stations that were around when I started at the Score, but also preceded the existence of the Score for many years. The Loop, WLUP, and its sister AM station, WMVP, AM 1000. It was a lot looser and more of a comedy station than it really was the sports station that it now is. But I want to introduce a guy who was a big part of both of those. And I've enjoyed working with him professionally, but also just hanging out and talking back and forth via direct message and the like. And he really was one of the guys that I looked to in terms of being a great sports guy with a great comedy mind as well. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Word Balloon, the great Bruce Wolf. Good to see you, Bruce.
John, it's great to see you. I don't know if I'm qualified to be on this show. I saw the open, and I've seen like only 3 of those movies. Although, I got to say that when I saw Octopussy, it reminded me of the movie that I wanted, the James Bond movie I wanted to have, where James Bond falls in love with his mother, and it's called Oedipussy. But other than
See, but you know, exactly. Oh man, come on, seriously. Now this is why I like talking to Bruce. And we were just lamenting that our third, if we would go back and forth in direct messages, is no longer with us, and that's Chet Kopic. Man.
Do you know I still, just the other day, I addressed him on a tweet on Twitter. I still send things to him, even though he's not here, because he's still here, you know. So and even like last year, like during a Bears game, it would remind me of, oh, there's number 49. It reminds me of Charlie Bivens and at Chet Kopic, and because we would go back and forth on Twitter about old Bear uniform numbers all the time. And he knew more about that than I did. And you know, I know this is TV and media related. There was one time that we were on the Loop together, and our paths didn't cross that often on the Loop. But for some reason, we got into a nostalgia thing about the Honeymooners. And I thought I knew a lot about the Honeymooners. He knew all 39 original episodes by heart, every single one of them. And I mean, he just laid waste to me. It reminded me of the time that I was on with Bob Surratt on Fox Thing in the Morning. And I made a reference, a Honeymooners reference. It's where Ralph Cramden is talking about they'd gone out on a date to try to recapture their youth. And he said, and remember, we'd listened to the songs of Little Jack Little. Now that's not even a character. That's just a reference. And Bob then tossed in and Bert Fomine. And I didn't know who Bert Fomine, but sure enough, it was there. So there's all these people, as geeky as I think I was watching all those episodes, there are geekier people. So
Oh yeah, that's the Hucklebuck episode.
the
Absolutely, man.
Hucklebuck, absolutely.
Good stuff, man. No, I died. And I didn't know the teenager in that episode is Ronnie Burns, George Burns's son.
Oh, right.
And then you suddenly see him on old Burns and Allen reruns, and it's like, oh yeah. And I think
What's
I forget what
amazing is, I was just looking it up the other day. I don't even know why, and it was maybe I had a premonition I was going to be on this podcast, but you hadn't finalized anything with me.
Well, we've been talking about it for a while.
It took. I mean, they did those 39 episodes. What did they slammed those together in one season? That it was amazing. I mean, now you get at most like 20 episodes or 22 episodes, and they had 39 in 1 year, and that's it. It's 1 year. Those original 39 are one spread out over a few years. No, there was 1 year for those. And remember when they came up with the Lost episodes, and I was like, oh, I can't wait to see them. I didn't care about it. It's like the 39 are. That's all I care about.
Being a broadcast nerd, I do appreciate them, and there are some decent Lost episodes, but there's a lot of crap. There's a lot of crap.
It's like they could have even been better. It reminds me a little bit of, I became Steve Dahl's partner for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I thought that technically he and I did a better show than Steve and Gary did. I actually thought it was better, but it wasn't like they were like the Model T. They were like the original. So it didn't really matter. It did, because technically a DeLorean is better, but it doesn't really compare to the discovery of fire.
No, I understand, but I always appreciated how adaptable you were, because you and John Brandmeier, obviously, for years, and Buzz, and that entire morning show was its own thing. And then when you did move over and you took over when Gary left and everything, I thought the show was great. In fact, it was a lot of funny stuff.
I would go from one show to the next. I mean, there was one time that Gary and I did a show. It was November the 22nd, 1993, which happened to have been the 30th anniversary of the assassination of JFK.
Okay, wow.
And now we're coming up on the 60th pretty soon. Okay.
I know, man.
So
2 years away.
So I had the idea, and this is after Gary had broken up with Steve just a couple of months earlier. So he had his own show. And
in the midday.
Flipboard there, and he's really worried about getting to the commercials, like Mussolini trying to get the trains to run on time. But I had this idea, why don't we pretend we're like disc jockeys from 1963, and we're getting the news over the AP wire in drabs that something's happening.
No.
But we are oblivious to it. We don't care because the Beatles are about to come to America. And so, the whole thing was like, oh, yeah, shots rang out in Dealey Plaza in Dallas. We'll get more to that later. But you know what? This I Want to Hold Your Hand is my we went on like that for a couple of hours. And it was
hilarious. Jesus.
With him. Yeah, there was one time, I mean, I just, it's like the Loop. I just sat in. So I'm sitting in with Kevin Matthews, who really, I think, is a comedic genius. I mean, he was unbelievable. But we're sitting there, and next to me is Mickey Rooney. Okay. And he was in town, I think, to do Lend Me a Tenor or something, and he was crapping all over it because it's a drawing room comedy, which requires split-second precision and knowing your lines and bang, bang, opening doors, closing doors. And he just would stop the whole thing and say ad-lib and throw everything off. But anyway, he's Mickey Rooney. Who cares? I mean, he danced with Judy Garland. Let's do a show. But I'm sitting next to Mickey, and I can't believe I'm sitting next to Mickey Rooney. And this was the old Loop. You could interview somebody for like 2 hours if you wanted to, and throw the commercials at the end. So we're sitting there next to Mickey Rooney, and after each commercial break, Kevin comes back and says, "We're here with Andy Rooney." And you know what? He wasn't really trying to make it funny. That's just the way his mind worked. And Mickey Rooney was so crazy by this time. He was oblivious to the fact that he was being referred to as Andy Rooney.
Oh, he didn't know. I thought he'd blow up.
I'm the only one there sitting there with some sanity. I'm sitting here. Kevin Matthews is calling Mickey Rooney Andy Rooney, and Mickey Rooney doesn't even care. And and I feel like Judy Garland ready to dance with him or something. So that, I mean, just weird stuff like that happened and really could never happen again. I don't think in morning radio in Chicago.
Did he bring all of his weird products that he would endorse, like Mickey? The most sane one, and it actually was good. Was, remember Canfield's had Mickey Melon soda pop, and it was like watermelon tasting soda. It was really good.
I don't recall that. I didn't recall that he had been reduced to hucksterism like that.
He sold hamburgers that were like hot dog width and length to fit in hot dog buns, and he'd sell round hot dogs for hamburger buns.
Well, I guess he felt like he was a square peg in a round hole his whole existence. So there you go.
Maybe. But yeah, no, honestly, that's what I loved about the Loop. It was, I mean, it's so funny because ultimately, Steve made it to CKG, and CKG had that free form format that they claimed at the height of corporate radio. And it's like,
they didn't have, because I remember Steve, when he got there, first of all, he had to play the commercials on time. And they had all these breaks and everything like that. And that's not the Steve Dahl I remember with Gary Meyer was, you'd be doing a show and then they'd remember like at about, 15 minutes before the show ended that they hadn't played like 3 blocks of commercials and then just throw them in there and nobody.
Yep.
So
yeah,
that was entirely different. I mean, that's back when they had these, this voodoo with the paper diaries that people would just fill out and just say, oh yeah, I listen to Steve Dahl 4 hours a day. Okay, fine.
Yeah, but also a lot of us did. And I remember, I think Gene.
No, I mean, he had, as we say, TSL, time spent
listening. Yeah.
Certainly with Steve and Gary, it was like the highest time spent listening, the most loyal audience and sitting around there. I remember before I got to be part of their show, I mean, it was like a religion for me to sit and listen to them. I just stop the car and have to have them on. And I mean, I created Chet Chit Chat as a, oh yeah, I am Chet Chit Chat. Oh yeah. No, I created it because I was inspired by what they were doing to Chuck Swirsky every morning. And I said, I could do that. So yeah, that was. No, I was as big a Steve and Gary fan as anyone could be. Then you become part of the show and you become jaded, and the rest is history.
If it's not too much to ask from an improvisational standpoint,
it is too much.
All right, there you go. I was going to say,
I mean,
can you give me
I can do like an outdated, and I don't.
Oh, that's fine. I don't need him to do it now.
And I don't even. There are people who do that voice better. I heard Matt Spiegel a couple of years ago. He's on, and I know Matt, and
sure,
he's on with Danny. I don't know which partner he had at the time. I think he was on with Jason Goff at the time. And Chuck Swirsky had played a clip of Chuck auditioning with Steve Stone to be doing White Sox baseball, and they were in Texas, and the winds were blowing a certain way, and Chuck made the faux pas of telling Steve, "Do you think that has something to do with global warming?" Embellishing a little bit. So Steve, being diplomatic, and I know I actually did some stuff with Steve at WLS, and he is, I wouldn't say that he's, a totally conservative, but he has a big conservative streak in him, and he diplomatically handled that because he didn't want to admit that, global warming is something that we should be concerned about that much. So, I mean, whereas Jason Benetti now will totally be diplomatic. He knows how to do it, but Chuck just drove right into it. Well, after they play this clip and they're giggling about it, and of course now they couldn't giggle about it because Chuck's on the station with him.
Right.
Actually,
that's true.
Twitter, when the Bulls win, somebody retweets this all the time. It's Chuck Swirsky dancing when after a Bulls victory, and it's it's white man dancing and everything, but it's kind of fun. It's not stupid. Maybe it's because he dances better than I do. But anyway, Matt Spiegel is doing a Chet Chit Chat. And you know how you do an imitation of an imitation. Nobody actually does. It's like Kevin got the imitation of Eddie Schwartz down, and then everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
Eddie. Right. Yeah. Nobody could do it before that. Nobody knew it, but Kevin's imitation gave everybody was like, "Oh yeah, we're here with EMS emergency." If we have enough time, I'll tell you about Eddie Schwartz's funeral. I was actually
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. So anyway, but Matt's doing Chuck, and I know he's doing shit, and I think I rifled off a direct message to him or something, which he ignored. But it was like, don't you dare go there, man. That's
Yeah, but you were kidding. Yeah, dude. Hey, and listen, Jake.
I mean, you got to be happy for him. I mean, I am, because nobody. I remember when Pat Manley was doing, was his partner. I think Pat Manley was like the fourth in a series of about 40 partners for Matt Spiegel, 10 of which were Danny Mac, who's a friend.
Right, off and on,
but anyway,
of course. Yes.
And then Manley leaves, and I think he quit after about 6 months. I guess he quit. I don't think he was fired. I don't really know. But I tweeted something like, because he'd worked like through the entire football season, and that's his bailiwick. I mean, he saw the whole game upside down his entire life as the long snapper for the Bears. And he loved that, and he did that well. And then I tweeted something like, he saw the prospect of watching 324 White Sox and Cubs games and said, I'm out of here. Because you have got to be such a geek. You think you're a geek. I mean, to just be involved that much in sports. And I'm even less so than I was when I was an award-winning sportscaster, which wasn't that much either. So,
well, again, this is why I always appreciated you, Bruce, because half was the scores and half was the funny. And I mean, just your ticks of, I read this incredible book about Mike Tyson. Well, I didn't read the book, but I read an article about the book, and it said, and I love, and I've done that myself many times, stealing from you. And also I can appreciate what you're saying because, I had my voices at the score. And after I left, I noticed Ron Santo was still on the score, now voiced by Jonathan Hood, Ron Ranto. And I'm like, yeah, I did that. And that's okay. I don't, please, man. If anything, isn't it great, like you said, when an impersonator cracks the code, like Kevin did with Eddie? I just had Ron Paulson on. He's Pinky and Pinky in the Brain from Animaniacs.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And a million other animated voices. And we were talking about when impressionists crack the code on a celebrity. It's so thrilling. And I never thought, and really this weekend, for the first time, I started to do Werner Herzog. And I had no idea that I could speak like him. And it's, little Peter Lorre, it's Peter Lorre meets Floyd the Barber, because it's,
that's a great.
Yes. So give him a German accent.
Something like, Andy, the letters of transit, Andy. I put them in my head. They're shaking, Andy. Yep, Andy. Floyd, I don't think I want a haircut from you the last 5 seasons on it. So, yeah.
Well, that's the shame of it, because poor and I'm thinking Howard McNair had that stroke. But isn't it nice that
the last few years?
But they told, and he was great. He was more spacey in that state than he was when he was excited, and that's why, like, for Werner Herzog, it really is post stroke Floyd the Barber. And I was thinking the other day we could get an ice cream. Wouldn't that be nice? It was great. Like I was watching one of because I have a new appreciation of the In Color Andy Griffith episodes. Of course, they can't hold a candle to the Barney years, but the other supporting players really stepped up, and especially Floyd.
I hated when Dick Sargent became Barney Fife. Whatever. I mean,
nice.
But
Jack Burns,
of course. Well, from Burns and Schreiber, where that was the comedy team, and their stuff was, remember that Schreiber would say stuff, and Burns would go, yeah, huh. They go, yeah, huh, yeah, huh, yeah, huh, yeah. That was their thing.
Yep, you're right.
See, I remember Burns and Schreiber, which is sort of, it's not such a big deal that I remember that, because when I did my show with Dan Proft on WLS, he'd just stop and he'd say, do you have any references after 1970? And I said, not really.
I get that all the time too, please. Come on, man. variety TV, there was nothing like it, and we were there till the end. Ed Sullivan and shows like I like watching on Decades the Ed Sullivan reruns, and I was going to say, isn't it great that there are so many episodes of the Ed Sullivan reruns where Ed Ames, Mingo from Daniel Boone, is singing on the Ed Sullivan Show, but not in an ironic way. He had all those albums that he made that were, playing on those MOR middle of the road stations.
Doing all that stuff. He was actually legit. Hey, I remember Hugh Downs getting to sing on the Jack Parr show. He was the announcer for Jack Parr.
Yeah.
And let's have Hugh Downs. And he wasn't going. The board goes back and it's still your turn from concentration. He actually sang a song on. So it was the first. I may have been the first karaoke in the world. But
that's awesome. So we're getting nice comments from Don Linda.
Very
absolutely, nice. Man. No, and I know Don's an old Loop listener.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say?
No, I mean I lost my train of thought. Come on, I'm a senior citizen. I don't.
That's all right. No. Stop that. No, and I was telling you again. It's ironic because again some of my favorite bits that you would do back on Brandmeier, and one of them was you and Brandmeier doing Sandler and Young duets. And
I not remember us doing that. Not at all. I have
really.
If you say we did it now, I remember Sandler and Young, of course, because what would be great was they juxtaposed two songs that had nothing to do with each other. All of a sudden, you're saying "Bye Bye Blues," one of them, and then the other guy goes "Also fonte la patrie." I mean, what is the connection there?
Yeah, like La Marseille and
or blues or something, but.
Right, or you're a grand old flag while the French guy's singing La Marseille, and it's just like, what are we watching? Why is this happening? But to his credit, I think it was Sandler was on Gilbert Gottfried's podcast, and he had amazing show business stories because he knew everybody.
Oh yeah, right. No, I mean, I guess my only regret is that Sandler and Young never teamed up with Ferranti and Teicher and did a dueling piano. I mean, he met two pianos next to each other playing Exodus. Oh my God.
I was now you're killing me, and I'm losing my train of thought. Well, we got to tell our Buddy Hackett story, obviously.
Oh, you want to hear it? Should we tell it right now?
Yeah, please, because I want to hear your. It's like Rashomon. I want to hear your version of it and see if it jives with what I remember.
Version, because I know my version. What's your version?
Well, it's just we were at the Score. Jesse Rogers is lead producing. I'm working the board.
Was Jesse? And remember Jesse there? I don't remember.
You don't remember Jesse there?
Oh, I remember Jesse because Jesse was my intern at Channel 32, and unlike other interns who get cups of coffee for you. Well, I delegated as much as I could. I said, go out to Arlington Park and do a story and give it back to me. I'll do it. And and it gave them great experience. Jesse, of course, remembers all that. But I don't remember him being there. And I was reminded by Brian Hanlon, who, if anybody got screwed out of a job, it's
no
Brian.
Shit.
Oh,
no shit.
God. Oh,
yeah.
I mean, and I love Jimmy DeCastro. He made my career. But getting rid of Brian, I mean, guy's at the top of the ratings and he gets fired. Yeah, it's just... And David Hawes fine, but there's no legitimate basis for firing Brian Handley. So anyway, but Brian reminded me that he was there, and now I'm telling the story again. So I won't shut up. Go ahead, you tell the story.
No, you're right. You guys were co-hosting.
You're the producer, and do people know that you went by the nickname of Shaky at the time?
I refer to my company as Shaky Productions.
Well,
so
there you go.
And honestly,
to call you Mr. Balloon or what? I didn't know.
No, you can still call me Shaky. It's all good, man.
So you just have this idea, and that week, Ron Gleason. I think Ron was actually trying me out, or whatever, and I failed spectacularly, but it was spectacular. And one day he had me on. Oh, gee, I got a call right now. Can you believe this?
All right. Do you need to take it?
My son Daniel. Hey, I'm on a podcast right now. Okay. Yeah. Well, you're more famous than I am, but can I do the podcast and I'll get back to you? Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye. It's my son in LA, not looking for advice. But anyway.
Scott Wolf, the great actor, perhaps? I'm kidding.
There you go.
Well,
so where were we? Oh, so that week, Ron Gleason had me on with. I did a different show every day, different partner. One day was Brian Hanley, who was great. Doug Buffone. I got to do a show with Doug, and he was the nicest guy in the world. He was asking me my opinion on things, and I'm thinking, you're Doug Buffone. What are you asking me my opinion? And of course, Doug did. I know the history of radio in Chicago. I mean, I used to put on my fake loop bio that I started in the business as Jack Benny's sound man in the 40s. I would make the sound of him, of his trousers rubbing together, chafing together across the stage. And then in the 50s, I was thrown out of the Soviet Union for being a registered Republican, stuff like that. But I know most of Chicago radio history. I was part of it, and I know it, from before I was on it.
Yeah.
So I got to say that the Buffone and Obradovich post-game show, especially when the Bears lost, was one of the greatest radio experiences ever. And I mean, I remember lines from Doug where he would say, and he wasn't faking it, or it wasn't theatrical. That was the beauty of it. I want them to get off the plane, take a bus to Soldier Field, turn on the lights, and work out tonight on a Sunday after the game. Yeah.
Yep.
It's I think the NFLPA would have had a different view of it, but that's the way he was, and it was hysterical.
Yes.
Now they've got, Matt Bowen. I love him. I always call him and I'm sure other people have mentioned this too. He's like the thinking man's Doug Buffone. So he sounds like Doug Buffone if Doug used polysyllabic words, and you get to the fourth paragraph of a Matt Bowen or newspaper article, and glazing over because you may as well be studying archaeology or who the heck understands that stuff.
Outstanding.
Certainly none of the Bear Court. Certainly Trubisky didn't understand it. So anyway, so I was on one day with Doug. I was on one day with Skip Bayless, who was and every time I hear Skip Bayless gets a contract renewal for like $42 million, I think that, first of all, the guy was really nice to me. And secondly, I insulted him by saying that at that time he was a columnist for the Tribune. And I'm so stupid. I said, oh, I really love Bernie Lincecum. Well, he probably hated Bernie because he was his competition at the paper. So we actually interviewed the Iditarod winner. I remember that. Skip was fun. But Skip told Gleason afterwards, and Gleason told me, hey, funny guy, not a sports guy. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was right. Okay, so Skip, Doug Buffone, Brian Hanley. I did a day with Steve Rosenblum, and I did other stuff with Rosenblum later in the score. And but one day with Hanley, and I forget who else I was on with, but at one point you suggest, hey, let's call Buddy Hackett. And what does that have to do with sports? And we did, and we get him on, and we start conversing, and he's on there, and I'm thrilled. And so I say, Buddy, I love Broadway musicals and everything. I'm going to get you. I don't have.
This is exciting.
I don't have the Music Man, but the Music Man is one of my favorites. This is.
Is that a comedy album? Oh, it's South Pacific. Wait a minute.
Ezio Pinza and Mary Martin.
Sure.
I got My Fair Lady, another one. So.
Oh, so you're Mr. Musical.
I love all that. I don't.
Sure.
Have a phone or hi-fi anymore, but the Music Man is one of the greats. And I once got to sing when I was on WLS. Shirley Jones had written her autobiography, and she came on, and I started singing to her. Good night, my someone good. And she was great, and it was great to sing a little bit to her. She didn't sing, but Buddy Hackett. So I said, Buddy, I love the Music Man, and I just love that song you did, Shapoopy. Now, for those of you who don't watch the Music Man, you may have seen the Family Guy episode where they do the entire Shapoopy number. They don't even change the lyrics. It's not a parody. The humor was in the way they had it with like the New England Patriots, and Tom Brady, I think, was on it, and it's in the cartoons, in the animation. But they did the entire song. That's what Seth MacFarlane and those guys could get away with. They could get away with Conway Twitty doing it. Just let's go to a Conway Twitty number for 2 minutes.
Yes.
With no jokes.
Nope.
But okay, so I say I love that thing. Well, he didn't need anything other than me to say it. I mean, I didn't even have to ask him. And he immediately goes into an a cappella version of Shapoopy. It's a long song. And at this point, he's very, very old. He does it perfect, doesn't miss a note. It's a cappella. That means with no Pella. And
No hat.
He's
No
like,
song.
and
No
so
music.
when it's done, I mean, Brian and I are just ecstatic about it. And it's one of the greatest moments. And we thanked him. And, I think he died a few months after that.
Yeah.
So this may have been his farewell performance. The great Buddy Hackett, probably, old, I'm imagining alone, not telling those, dirty jokes on Johnny Carson anymore, or, and we called him up. And I think we gave something to him that day. And we gave him his last performance, and he gave us something. And it's like, hey, we were all with Buddy Hackett, okay? And it was great. It's really in my top 350 thrills in radio and TV in Chicago.
But that's, again, and really to lean on radio, that's the kind of moments you would have on the loop all the time in MVP. And in my 9 years at the Score, it was great when I'd be part of those moments. Now I'll correct the story slightly because it's even funnier. And you're right. You were having a rough week, and chemistry just, that's kind of a hallmark of the Score, that sometimes
I really was having a rough week. I didn't know. I thought it was a good week.
I mean, no, seriously, we had fun, and I'd go into my voices, and I'd try to coax voices out of you, but it just seemed like driving might have, and again, this was my perception, that they wanted you to kind of lead or whatever, and you seemed a little nervous about things.
Interesting? It's interesting that you mentioned that, because it really wasn't until I got the radio show on WLS that I felt that I actually, and that was like the best thing that I ever did, that I had come into my own. And what I needed to, and then I'm in my, this was just a few years ago. I was in my,
I understand.
And then before that, I had done like the show Barely Today, which I got the mug from Channel 5, which I drove, which I loved it, and it didn't last very long, but I needed that experience as well. And let me tell you the story behind one of my experiences on the Score. It just reminded me, because it shows about a little bit of my fear of actually being in the driver's seat, which I'm not now afraid of. The problem is I don't have the job anymore. So Drew Hayes, who later brought me to WLS. I mean, he had me sit in on the Score, and then he goes to WLS, which is a conservative political talk station, and he brings me over there. Who makes the jump from sports to, Keith Olbermann did. I mean,
Olbermann on the liberal side, sure.
And Olbermann actually almost replaced me at MVP. It's hard to believe that
wow.
But at MVP, and I asked him about this when we were both at NBC. I sent him an intra, NBC email, and he said,
yeah,
and he loved telling it, because he said he thought he was thinking about taking it, but he wasn't going to take my job in the morning. He couldn't get up that early. He was going to take the afternoon drive. And then the whole thing collapsed. And he was like still ticked off about it. I said, Keith, what he's ticked off about? You're making $10 million a year. It doesn't matter. It's just like, but you're right. And it kind of hurts me. And now I'll toss in my sleep over this. You shouldn't be that truthful to me. But anyway, but it is true. So what happened was, I'm on this week on the Score, and they had me on with Zach Zaidman. And every time I hear Zach, and I'm so happy for him, he's the Cubs announcer, and he does innings, and great. Yeah. And he does, and I love the post-game show where he's like a NASCAR driver with all these sponsors all over him, and this pregnant pause is brought to you by Borden's Milk. I mean, and sponsors for everything on that. But he's got a great gig. He gets to do that. And he did the Bears before then, and he's really serious and all that. But so Drew, in his infinite wisdom, and Drew helped me a lot in my career. He has me and Zach Zaidman doing morning drive the week of the baseball All-Star game. So everybody's on vacation, nothing.
Right.
And we are talking about the Bears, and this is 12 years ago. It's 2009, July. 2009.
Okay. All right.
So a guy So I had been making the point, and I was kind of nervous because, I'm kind of thin on my sports knowledge, but I think I kind of know the Bears. And I was
Sure.
making the point that I thought that Devin Hester was trending. That's the operative word, trending to become like one of the top 3 or 4 Bears of all time. He was trending. So a guy calls in and he says, "What are you talking about? He's not one of the top 3 or 4 Bears. We got Buckets, we got Bears, we got Bronco, whatever." And so I immediately clicks in my head. I figured, okay, I got a live one right now because he hasn't really listened to what I said. I said it was trending. He hadn't made it yet. I mean, you remember at that point, they were kicking the ball into Lake Michigan to avoid Hester. He had warped the game, and he had returned all these, as a matter of fact, I think he went downhill after that and then came back. He gets, and now they're Hall of Fame for him. And, he was warping the game. He was not just a game changer. He was the game changer. And,
I'm with you.
Huh? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
the operative word's trending. So I feel I got a live one here. So I decided. So I go off on the guy, and I go, "Do you even listen to what I say? You are sullying my reputation. You are libeling me, sir." And I go and John, I'd say about 2/3 of it was just when you're scared, like of a bear in the woods, you act like a bear as well. It's just you're frightened. So part of it that was that, and 1/3 of it was theatrical, where I decided, I'm going to channel my inner Dan Bernstein right now. I'm going to go funny. And I think I'm going to do Bernstein, but it wasn't. I would be lying if I said, "Oh, it's just an act." It wasn't. It was, and the killer line was. At the end, I punctuated it. I said, "So why don't you just shut up and drive to work?" Well, Les Grobstein, who is the historian of everything, tells me that on Who You Crappin' that week, and it's got to still be a record because they don't do it anymore. It's like Johnny Morris, I believe, still has the record for the 50-yard dash because they don't do it anymore. So he told me that there were 9 Who You Crappins
about you.
Negative, and he said that was a record. Now, who's to argue with him? I don't think Terry Boers would argue with him. I don't know. I never counted him, but Les would.
Of course, Les would. That's awesome.
I couldn't actually listen to that. I couldn't take it. But then, and Dan was on vacation that week, but Terry was working with Lauren.
Okay.
And Terry went off on me. Okay. So I decided to call in.
Uh-oh.
So I called in and I said, "Look," and Terry was conciliatory and everything like that. Once I called in, and I told him that the next morning, the guy who I had ripped on called in, and he said he was a longtime listener of the station, and he apologized to me because he hadn't really listened to me saying trending, and then I apologized to him because I figured you got more stock in the station than I do. You listen to the station all the time. I'm just this charlatan who's on here. So I think I promised him a steak dinner, which I never delivered on. So that's the way that story ended. And, so it's just funny the way that goes. But I mean, I was on that week with Zach Zaidman. At one point, he was telling me off the air, at the beginning of the week, he was saying, "You work with Tamron Hall, right? Do you know? Are you still there, John?"
Oh yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, so at Channel 32, I hadn't worked with her for a few years at this point, but you worked.
Yep.
You got a show now, and she was on the Today Show for a while and everything. Do you know?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so he said you work with Tamron Hall. I mean, and he was like drooling over it. Okay, so like on Tuesday,
Tamron Hall's pretty beautiful. Yeah.
Tuesday night, he calls me, and he says, "We're going to have a mystery guest for you tomorrow." And okay, so I immediately know who it's going to be, but I played along with it because I didn't want to spoil it for Zach. Okay?
Sure.
So she calls in, she's a mystery guest, and she's hardly disguising her voice. This wasn't exactly
What's my line?
Still on What's My Line? so I ask her questions like, let's see, are you like one of my favorite people of all time? And she goes, maybe. And I go, are you Bobby Hall? so, so finally we flipped over all the cards, and she was there. But I mean, that was part of that week. With it was so wild to be on with Zach, because he would try to bring it back. And oh my God, I also have one other thing with Grody. I have this thing. Grody and I did a number of shows, and we would do like Sunday mornings at 9:00 in the morning. We would start, and we giggle and goof around. And the guy, that New York sportscaster, what's his name? He's like the biggest guy in the world on the Fan. He's been there for years. And
the Mad Dog, Chris Russo.
No, the other guy. I want to say Facenda or something. I can't remember.
Well, no, that's John Facenda. That's the old voice of the NFL.
It's Mike
Francesa.
Francesa, right?
Go on.
That's something I couldn't get Facenda from Francesa. Okay,
that's close.
Anyway,
that's close. Don't kill yourself.
It reminds me of when Harry Carey. There was a ground ball to the shortstop, and he said it was Andre Rogers, and it was actually Sean Dunston. But I knew it confused black Cubs shortstops, and by 30 years. So I'm getting the Harry Carey disease right now. Anyway, Francesa would do the show from his basement, and he'd talk about, get over here, come on my lap, to his kid or whatever. He didn't care. And so Grody, who does the best impersonations, I mean, the guy does Lou Piniella. Okay?
Oh, that's terrific.
He does everybody. So, and I wanted to do the entire show of him doing Lou Piniella.
You should have.
So we're on at 9:00 after Francesa, and we're both doing Francesa impersonations for about 20 minutes on the Score on a Sunday morning. Who cares?
Exactly.
We'll get to the whatever's going on.
Sure.
We had a bulletin from Hallis Hall or something. This Bears player named Gaines Adams had died.
Oh,
he was the rookie draft choice or something. So we're looking at each other. I'm going like, who's Gaines Adams? Grody knew. I didn't. And this is when, Wikipedia was just in its infancy. You couldn't, later on, I would wind up doing, when I did my show with Dan Proft, I would try to be one paragraph ahead of the listeners on what I was getting on my computer. But at this point, you're trying to gather information. But over the next 4 hours, we became expert, or he actually knew a lot already, but we had Hub on, we had Hampton. I think Hampton broke bad on the guy a little early, Dan.
Yeah, wow. Wow.
Or it was against the Bears or something. I don't want to. Yeah, I love Dan Hampton. As a matter of fact, I wanted to once tell Dan, they had made fun of him. He was on the Score analyst, and he was talking about something that some Bears player had done, and then the Bears won. And he said, but that doesn't mean they won because of what he did. He said, it's like, the rooster crows and then dawn breaks, but the rooster didn't cause the dawn to break. And he was made fun of for that. And actually, it's true what he says. And it's the logical fallacy of post hoc ergo propter hoc. And I wanted to give it to next time that happens, Danimal, you just tell these smarty pants guys, went to Duke and stuff like that. Tell them, or the Illinois Broadcasting School, one or the other.
Exactly.
You tell them, hey, just because Trubisky threw those passes doesn't mean they won. It's that's not the reason. That's post hoc ergo propter hoc, and wow them that way. But I never got to give it to Dan. So there you go.
That's a shame.
Anyway, a couple of good stories for you.
Absolutely. Well, let me hold on, because I want to tell the Hackett story, because
absolutely. I'm sorry.
It did happen slightly differently, and the great thing was, so you're co-hosting with Hanley, and it was just like kind of I don't know. It might have been out of season. I don't remember what time of year it was, where we struggle for sports topics and stuff, February or July, whenever it was. And Hanley goes to, because really Jesse's the guy who made it happen. I was just running the board.
Oh, really? Okay.
So really, you got to give Jesse the credit, buddy. But this is what happened. So Hanley goes, hey, Mr. Hotshot, you always get those celebrities for North. Why don't you get us a celebrity for a change? And Jesse goes, who do you want? And you go, Buddy Hackett.
I did that? Oh,
yes. And Jesse's like, I have Buddy Hackett's home number. Let me see what I can do.
That's even
that's why it was so fantastic. And I'm listening in, and I can hear literally Buddy on the other end. Hey, Buddy, it's Jesse Rogers from The Score. Listen, two of your biggest fans are hosting right now. Would love to get you. You got a couple minutes? Oh, yeah, I can talk for a few minutes. No problem. And
you got the funny. And John, you just told the story because you wanted to do the Buddy Hackett imitation.
oh, I won't deny that. Absolutely. Bruce.
It sounds a little Peter Lorre. It's part of the Peter Lorre tree.
Yes, I would love to talk to my fans who remember me singing Shapoopy on The Music Man. Yes. Werner Herzog Hackett. Yes.
Yes. But it's like the Andy Reid coaching tree. So yeah, I did not realize that I'm the one who asked for it, and that Jesse came through. So you were just a functionary. Screw you!
I suck. You've been giving me accolades literally for.
I thought I owed you this today. You owe me.
I do owe you. Yes. Yeah. Yes. But also, no, man. I mean, listen. We again we bring up Sandler and Young. You started to mention, of course, Brickhouse.
Wait.
And
all right. So I'm going to tell the Brickhouse with Brandmeyer's story.
Please.
So I grew up wanting to be Jack Brickhouse, and my father, who was in the hardware business, says this is a pipe dream.
Jack Brickhouse, voice of the Cubs before Harry for decades, going back to the 40s.
White Sox, the Bears on the radio. He did everything. There's a statue of him in front of on the formerly Tribune Tower, and it looks more like Harry Truman than Jack Brickhouse, but that's okay. So anyway. Brickhouse was everything. He was ubiquitous. And I wanted to grow up to be him. And my dad said, you're Jewish, you should be a lawyer. Of course, I was, and still now I am again. So, Dad, you win. Dad wins. So, but anyway, and I'm doing the Jim Volkman impersonation of Jack Brickhouse. So, which I traded for. He needed a recommendation to get a sportscasting job at CKG. And I said, all right, but is it okay that I do the Brickhouse impersonation? He said, sure, absolutely. And I go, oh boy. So Brickhouse did everything. And my father said it was a pipe dream. And I thought when he was referring to pipes, that he was referring to the pipes that he threaded at the hardware store. I had no idea what he was talking about. It wasn't until I saw a scene from Fantasia like 30 years later that I realized what a pipe dream is. Okay. But anyway, Brickhouse was our hero. He was, he like lived with you. You'd come home from school and he'd be doing the 10th inning or the end of the ball.
Right. When Wrigley Field didn't have lights.
He was like your weird uncle, man. I mean, it was
your babysitter. Yeah.
And so, I see everything through I even tried to do football play-by-play years ago. And every play was out of the huddle they come, because that's what he would do. And he and Comp, they didn't even really know what was going on with the game, but it didn't matter. So the ball's on the 33, the 34, I'll call it the 37,
Yep.
So anyway, the Brickhouse is a childhood hero. I got to interview him when I was in college, and it was real nice. As a matter of fact, when I interviewed him in college, he said, make sure you got your tape recorder working and that you got it recorded. He was real nice about that.
Yes.
So I'm on, and Johnny knew that, I love Brickhouse and all that. And I had done this imitation on the radio of the loop of Brickhouse having sex, and it goes something like, that's pretty well hit. Back. Hey, I need a cigarette.
But for me, it was always the laugh because, but the best was when you'd put like a good two beat pause and it'd be
That's the imitation. Johnny knew I did it, so he asks me, and Johnny had a habit of doing this kind of thing, but I wouldn't always fall for it, but I fell for it this time. Where he had me talk about somebody behind their back, and then that person would be on the radio. And then Johnny would play the Backstabbers, this smile in your face. And he'd get me to do that. But on this one, he asked me to do the Jack Brickhouse having sex thing. Well, sure enough, I do the whole thing. And Johnny goes, and ladies and gentlemen, welcome Jack Brickhouse. And he's sitting there, and he actually heard the whole thing. And he was totally classy, total gentleman about it. I turned a whiter shade of pale. But I saw Procol Harum at Ravinia in 70, blew my ears out. But that's another story. So Yeah, so I mean, you do. How many guys can say that they did Jack Brickhouse having sex and then he actually heard you doing it? And that's
But he
John.
was cool about it.
Well, he was totally classy.
All right, good.
Classy, but Johnny would do that. Yeah, Johnny was like Borat before there was Borat. He even had the mustache.
Yes.
What killed Johnny was, I never forget. At one point, remember the singer John Mayer? Something was having some scandal in his life. And TMZ confronted him outside his house, and he was like, "Oh yeah," and it was open about it. See, Johnny was the kid who would belch in the back of the class, and everybody would. But then, after a couple of decades, everybody else was not only belching; they were like throwing up all over the place. So it eclipsed. You couldn't be a shock jock anymore. That's what it came down to.
That's interesting. Go on.
Yeah. No. So I mean. That's why, I mean, like I'm passe. I thought that I was funny for the medium at the time. And, now even the show Barely Today that I did on Channel 5, which I loved. I mean, it was I don't normally watch myself or listen to myself. I would watch that show a lot after I'd done it. And I would say, this show is so adorable. I mean, I was adorable. Ellie Pai Hong, my co-host, was adorable. Everybody was adorable. It was a great fun show, and I mean, it was like a podcast because the set behind it was they would practically take it. They just knock it over after each show. I would conduct the imaginary NBC orchestra with some chopsticks that had gotten at a Korean restaurant that Ellie had taken the whole crew to.
Sweet, nice.
The imaginary NBC orchestra playing because I love the themes like the old Channel 5 news and everything like that. So I mean that was, I lost my train of thought. Miss Court Reporter, can you read back the?
It's all good because honestly, I wanted to ask about that TV show. Now it was like early morning, right? It was like 4 a.m. or no?
It was the first 4:30 in the morning show. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And the thing is that remember this is before the internet. It's right before the internet, so we would be at the mercy of the delivery of the Sun-Times and the Tribune to see what the heck's going on in the world because all the newsrooms would just copy stuff from the newspapers. They didn't have the staff to do anything. They had,
of course not.
They used to call the Sun-Times my greatest intern. 35 cents. What an investment. And so we would wait for that. Plus, I had to get up so early in the morning to do the show, and if I didn't get 5 hours of sleep, I'd have like a pain running right down the center of my forehead, and I'd have to read a teleprompter. It was my stuff that I had written. And then I had a producer who was actually sabotaging me. He was this hysterically funny guy, great guy, Ben Bowman. But he would write like little anti-George Bush comments in between my lines that I'd have to skip over on the center of my forehead. But it was still great. It was a great show. There was one point where we were showing a story about the some light. Some stars in the sky or something. And I said, well, isn't that what the Sybaris looks like, one of their patterns? And the director, who was like this, I'd say mid-30s, kind of, attractive woman, she's the floor director directing the cameras around. She just lets it out because it was kind of a little loosey-goosey, but she said, oh, no, that's not what it looks like. So we turn the cameras on her. She
nice.
Out of the studio, and I run after her. We're winding down to the end of the show, just like we're doing in this one, and I just sit down somewhere and say goodbye, everybody. But that's the kind of show it was, and WGN's morning show is kind of like that. Although I'll find something wrong with anything that I'm not involved with.
I hear you.
I'll find things wrong with what I do too. But the WGN morning show to me is like bowling with bumper pads because it's an irreverent newscast that is irreverent about everything except the news. So, I doubt very much, for example, that they actually tackled the Gian Greco Cheryl Burton thing head on. But I understand it because it's Channel 9.
I was putting somebody on standby because they kept bringing up, why does Bruce say Gian Greco? And I'm like, I don't know, and I don't care. But if you want to
I like Mark, and Mark and I have gone through similar circumstances with personnel. And here's the only thing I'll say about Mark is, and I like Mark.
I like Mark too.
I mean, I've known him. I golfed with him. I spent a New Year's with Mark before Janet Davies and the entire city did. I was in a New Year's Eve party, like 83 or 84, something like that. My wife and I were the only people. We went to this party in Evanston. We were the only people who showed up because there was a snowstorm that was coming. We were the only ones who showed up like idiots. And around 5 minutes to midnight, this small Italian sports car is trying to make its way through the snowstorm on Evanston Street. And my friend tells me, oh, that's got to be Mark Giangreco. He lives next door to me. And we go out there and we help Giangreco push his little Italian sports car because it wasn't much to push. It's not much, it weighs a little tinker toy. And
right
into his driveway, and I introduced myself to him, and I think he mentioned that he thought he knew me from the Loop or something like that. So that's when I met Mark, and we played golf a number of times. My producer, Bob Borwell, became his producer.
Oh, okay.
A lot, but I will say this because I always screw it up for myself. I contain multitudes. Here's the thing. He does a tweet a few years ago in which he spoke out of turn because you're the Channel 7 sportscaster. You're not supposed to talk like this. He says, Trump voters are simpletons, okay? And, at this point, I'm, just beyond doing a conservative political talk show. And I didn't mind it so much that he insulted Trump voters. What I minded was that he was trying to have it both ways by being the local yokel TV sportscaster and I only became a political talk show host out of necessity because I couldn't keep a sportscasting job. You don't get to do both, okay? But he says that, which insults Trump voters, and he gets suspended for it. He gets fired a couple of years later for sounding like a Trump voter. He has been accused of racism and sexism, perhaps, I think, maybe very well unjustifiably, but that's the way it goes. And he's kind of been hoisted by his own petard here, as we all are in life. So, there you go, Mark.
No, I understand, and which is why I don't miss the broadcasting rat race that I always refer to myself as a foot soldier. And yeah, I mean, I made it for 30 years, but I was always, a weekend host, sidekick, producer, everything but a full-time host, and that's okay. And really, again, I'm so more comfortable on the digital platform, and I get to say what I want. I watch myself, and I'm a liberal, and that's okay. Right. I'm not here to. I'm not here to.
I mean, screw you, Shaky, who didn't even think of the Buddy Hackett thing. You owe me, man.
I do owe you.
Who came up with that? You were.
I'm switching parties for the next election just for you, Bruce. There you go. That's what I'm going to do.
I'll vote Democratic for you, John.
See,
I love you. You're so good. Thank you for.
Oh, you're honestly, that's very nice, Bruce, and truly. I as you know, the reason why I want to have you on is to hear the Brickhouse stuff, and it's so funny. In the 90s, Mike Greenberg and we were eating at Trattoria Gianni and everything, and I guess Brick was a regular there with Pat Brickhouse as well. And Greeny's like, my man, let's do something classy. Let's send over a round of drinks to Brickhouse. And I'm like, okay, yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
So we do it. We did it, and Pat comes over and it's like, boys, you have to come over and say hello. That was really nice. And I'm like, sure. And we're both there. And poor Jack, this is when Jack was already like losing it, pal.
Right.
And everything. And he was a sweetheart.
Pal.
I'm losing it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's the game of baseball. You win some, you lose some. Yeah, but it's the 70s, Jack, and we lose them all. This sucks. We hate this. But anyway.
Well, he's the one who said everybody has a bad century about the Cubs.
But I mean, he was nice, but man, the poor man just spit all over us when he was talking.
It's okay.
And it's like,
next time we talk, if we do, I'll tell you the time that Lou Holtz spat all over me. Okay, is that a good tease? And you get Jackie to get Lou Holtz on because you actually have no clout with anybody. I'm wasting my time with you.
This is true. This is very true. I want you in the podcast business, sir, because I think it would be great. And by the way, we don't have to, if you got a couple more minutes, I don't mind hanging out. It's up to you.
I'm used to the hard out. I loved reading the story about about Giangreco in the Sun-Times. This guy, Jeff Agrist, I think his name is, wrote this piece over the weekend about Giangreco. My favorite part was, and this is where I tweeted to Chet, even though he's not here anymore. I tweeted, my favorite part was Chet Coppock crapping all over Johnny Carson's monologue. Chet was oblivious. He had so many important things to say about, good old number 89 or good old number 72.
Steve Kaiser.
Or whatever. Not the bridge, Jim Candile. So he had to talk, and there's a hard out. at 10:28 or something like that. You got to go to Johnny's Model. I mean, that's a network thing. He didn't care. He went through that. And apparently Phyllis Schwartz, who was the news director at the time, came in and would scream at him. And that's how the guy lost his gig. And Chet Wood for years, he never lived it down. He never lived it down. And even a few months before he died, I actually talked to Chet. We had him on the radio, Amy Jacobson and I on WIND.
Yeah.
It was still sour grapes about it. And I would tell Chet, look, Chet, you don't have a right to have sour grapes about Channel 5, losing a Channel 5 sports job. It's my turn to have sour grapes over losing a sports job, not you, Chet. And he was, but, he was a character. And
you couldn't help it, man.
Yeah. No.
Now, you see, my favorite Chet Chat, and it's more Swirsky than Chet, but I used to love, and it's true, when WGN had the rights to the Bears games, and especially on radio, and their coverage would begin at our coverage begins at 7:05 with blah, blah. But you would be, our coverage begins at 4:54 a.m. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Steve laughing hysterically over that, because I would say it would be with Jack's scrapbook, in which Jack, interviews the ghost of Red Grange, the ghost of the Galloping Ghost. And then it goes on from there, because they all day coverage. And here's the thing about Chet. He actually revolutionized sportscasting, TV sportscasting, because when he came along, that was with the advent of the mini cam. Before that, I mean, they're basically taking movies of it. I mean,
yes.
They have Dino De Laurentiis or the guy who did Birth of a Nation, D.W.
Griffith.
You'd have to have them shoot the Cub highlight for it. And then you'd have Ernie do Sunday Night Sports, where he'd actually, so meta, he would announce himself. He would be on WGN. He'd go, and the bases were loaded, and then I came up and I hit a home run. I mean,
it was awesome.
Broadcasting like that. But Chet came along in Chicago at the time of the minicam, and he'd go into the Bears locker room and interview everybody. And I was astonished, because me, it's like, who cares about what everybody has to say about all this stuff? And he would interview each player as if he were doing a House Un-American Activities Committee hearing into the Vietnam War.
Yes.
And it was, but what is that what he did actually became quotidian, if I could use the expression. It just became a part of what everybody did. And nobody stood back and said, what the heck are we doing here? Why are we interviewing all these people? Why are we taking it so seriously? And the fact that somehow he was able to run over his time on this garbage on the 10 o'clock news, because after all, and now of course it's even more ridiculous, because you've got. I actually was a traffic reporter on TV, and even at the time I said, "What is this for? Nobody has a TV set in their cars." Now, it's more ridiculous, because it's got to be for people who don't have GPSs. I mean, what is the point? So, of course, I don't have to say it anymore, because the audiences are shrinking, and it's a podcaster's world out there.
My man, jump in the pool. There's plenty of room, and we need funny people like you doing this stuff.
I think Adam Carolla is doing fine. So
Adam Carolla does fine, but there's room for more than just one. I honestly, Bruce, I have that attitude about nerd culture and the stuff that I normally cover, and I'm like, everyone has their own point of view. I'm very to quote our great Jesse Owens, run your own race. Don't worry about the guy in the next lane. Just focus on your own time, and you'll be fine. And it's true.
I'd rather quote Jesse Rogers, who said, "Mr. Hackett, we're big fans."
Come on, you gotta come on, buddy. Yay!
There you go.
Oh my God, seriously, man. I mean, I worked for 10 years with the guy. Him and Greeny and Judge Sarad, we had a blast. We had so much fun during those years. And honestly, Bruce, I won't waste your time, but truly on the next talk, I do want to talk about how you almost and how true it was. I don't know if it was true or not, but when they were putting the score together, I thought they went to you and Chet first.
I thought they were going to build the station around me. It's pretty close. I actually turned them down. I mean, I sat there with Danny Lee and
Seth Mason.
Seth Mason and Harvey Wells, the late Seth Mason and the late Danny
Love
Lee.
Seth.
And
Yeah, love Dan, love Seth.
I'll tell you
Harvey, not so much, I'll be honest.
The story about how I had cut myself shaving because I was young and there was blood all over my white collar, and Seth laughed at me. And Seth also, well, no, he was nice. He was nice.
Okay.
No, Seth was a great guy, and he's
love Seth.
Score. But I'll tell you about the meeting at the Gold Coin restaurant in Skokie and everything like that, and I paved the way for Mike North, and I'm glad I did. Okay.
Yeah, man. No, honestly, I'll talk to you a minute off the air, but yeah, I'd love to get that story. And truly, this was great. I love hearing, and I'll retitle this. Yeah, nothing. Like I said, I owed you. You helped me. What are you talking about?
Right.
So, Shapoopy, it's all good, man. Please come back, and because I do also will still want to talk like old reruns. Because again, that's the kind of stuff that would kill me. And can we at least agree before we leave that the Joey Bishop show was probably the worst celebrity sitcom ever?
I didn't have my critical faculties at that point. I did note that I did tweet when the Bears got Andy Dalton that it just reminded me of Abby Dalton. So it apparently lives on with me.
Guy Marks.
In that show,
Corbin Monica replaced Guy Marks, and Guy Marks was fired from that show because he couldn't keep his hands off Abby Dalton, and she kept complaining and like, "Get this creep away from me," and they fired him.
See, I think we've exhausted that topic, but there are so many other shows. There's My the Car to talk.
Yes,
about, and
it's about time. It's about time that Joe Ross. Imogene Coca.
Don't test me on Run Buddy Run, which lasted about 10 episodes. You remember it though, of course. And,
I'm so proud of you. That's fantastic. Run Buddy Run. Jesus.
I know every bank loan that Milburn Drysdale ever gave. So there's a lot of knowledge there that you can tap into.
Come on, man.
Yeah.
This is what I'm saying. And also an excuse to break into more voices and stuff. So
I want to hear, just give me a list of voices that I can, lead you into. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
I want to hear your voices.
Oh, sure, man. No. I mean, I did. Now I will say I'm no Zach Saban, but I used to do, Ryan Swift. We really feel we got a great team. We're going to do good, And that's what I did. And literally, it was awesome. He was great about it. He's like, "That's how you think I sound?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, and literally, North and me and Jesse were at the whatever it is now, Guaranteed Rate Field, and we're in the owner's box. And we say hi to him, and he has a couple of his cronies, and he points at me. He's like, "This is the only guy in Chicago I let make fun of me," and I'm like, "That's awesome, man." I love that. So honest, and I saw Jerry. We had a dinner with North at Gibson's just like the year before COVID, and we're all sitting down to dinner, and Reinsdorf and Chuck Schumer are having dinner, of all people. And Jerry came up and he said, "He's like, excuse me, I got to talk to the senator." And we're like, "No problem, man."
We
whatever.
Understand. Jerry Reinsdorf said one thing that I thought, I use it all the time. He said, "Always put off till tomorrow what you don't have to do today, because the problem will take care of itself in the meantime." And I like those Chestertonian kinds of paradoxical things or twists on things that we normally believe in, the bromides that we take for granted. Yeah, you should put things off. And that's, he's put off a championship for the White Sox for
15 years. Absolutely. Hey, pal, watch out what you say about our Sox, okay? Whee! Oh, my God. I thought we were going to have to bring up Jack Brickhouse and pulling out the tarp for a rain delay. And you know what I'm talking about. Come on now. I made the rounds.
That's got to be in the dark web.
Yes, I understand. I'll leave it at that. Out of slight respect to Mr. Brickhouse, absolutely. But it is my favorite rumor. So there you go. And I'm saying it. Don't worry, Bruce. I won't implicate you. I'm saying this.
You can't libel a dead man, but you can sure be in bad taste.
I understand. You're right. And again, the guy was.
Remember, I'm older, John, and I'm trying to score points in heaven right now. So
I respect that.
I mean,
come back
to be my Buddy Hackett moment with you.
This guy, I'm telling you, what a voice! I love that guy. That's again, that's why I was so excited about Werner Herzog, because the distinct voices are leaving pop culture. So we don't have the Jimmy Stewarts. We don't have the Fondas. We don't have these great voices that Frank Gorshin and
we don't have a
like
Dean Jagger anymore. And somebody once did this a number of years ago about how the men there used to have men in Hollywood, but then you have these androgynous guys. Like DiCaprio was considered by this guy as but we used to have men in Hollywood. Now, not so much. Yeah.
Well, again, do an imitation of Brad Pitt or George Clooney. Good luck.
Right. They all sound the same.
They just got like nice broadcast style voices. But yeah, it's like, where's the...
You don't have a... I once did on Channel 32, and we played it every year. I did a parody of It's a Wonderful Life, and I didn't realize I had just started at the station. I had done this whole parody, and it required them, the editor, Todd Roberts, and my producer, Bob Warwald, I handed this to them like on the day that I wanted it done. It required like 15 man hours or something like that with the big reel-to-reel things. It wasn't digital, and they had to go through the movie, and it was just basically, I called it It's a Wonderful Leg, Monty Stratton. It went through all the Stewart movies, but grabbed it onto, because Jimmy Stewart was in the Monty Stratton story, and it was in A Wonderful Life. And at one point, he's talking to Potter. Remember when he screamed, and he starts lecturing him, and he says, and so I was like, Potter was Hallis, and I was going, you throw nickels around like manhole covers. I want to squeeze your head till the pus comes right out of it. And we played that every year on Channel 32 in the morning. But it was, I didn't have the audience like Giangreco had, so I made worse jokes about Walter Payton than Mark Giangreco did, but I didn't have to apologize for mine because nobody cared.
Poor Walter. Good Lord.
I remember the day Walter Payton, he's making this, in the morning at the assignment desk, we hear there's going to be a Payton presser, and I'm at Channel 32.
Yeah.
And for Jen Struzek, and if I mentioned it right now to her, and this happened in 1999, I'd say Peyton Presser, she'd start laughing. And I haven't talked to her in years. I said, oh, he's probably opening another restaurant.
Oh, no.
And then, of course, it was the announcement that he's dying. And I got to say something, that when he did die, you can make fun of Virginia McCaskey, and God knows I've had my fun with her over the years. Whee! But she impromptu was so eloquent when he died. She came to, and she was just great. She was absolutely terrific. So you got to give credit where it's due. And the reason you have to give credit where it's due, John, is because that way the criticism really stings. Because the whole idea is to say, oh no, I don't want to overstate the case. You are really good, but Bruce, you really had a rough week that week.
Shut up. Come on. And also, I want to.
And Jesse Rogers getting Buddy Hackett. I don't even know why I even look at that.
I understand. Totally. And I don't blame you if you never want to talk to me again. It's all right. If you want to block me on Twitter, it's okay.
Can we do another one tomorrow? Or you get another?
I'm talking to an Irish guy, an Irish comic book creator in the afternoon tomorrow. But
bring out your cup.
But honestly, Bruce, I'll tell you off the air for a second. I do have an idea that I'd like you to be involved with.
Here, we'll talk off the air.
All right, buddy. Well,
thank you so much for having me. Okay.
Are you kidding? Dude, thank you for doing it. I know I'm cutting into dinner time.
Edit out the turkey, Nick.
That's why you need. I'm telling you need like a Vincent Price or David Niven cravat, and it'll take care of all that. You just need to be that kind of country club, Milburn Drysdale golf partner.
There we go.
All right, Bruce, hang on while I close the show. Thank you, man.
Will do. Thanks, John.
Excellent. Bruce Wolf, everybody. That was terrific, and it exceeded expectations, and I insulted the guy, so I feel terrible about that. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. Watch me and John McRae tomorrow afternoon on Word Balloon Live. We're going to talk about John's new work, and he's got a Kickstarter going for an art book that he's doing. Lots of fun. Stay safe, stay happy, and stay healthy.